And whereas, during his senior year at Georgetown University, Senator Durbin began his career in politics as an intern in the office of United States Senator Paul Douglas of Illinois before pursuing a Juris Doctorate at Georgetown University and being admitted to the Illinois Bar in 1969. And whereas, as a member of the legal profession, Senator Durbin began practicing in Springfield, where he served as legal counsel to then Illinois Lieutenant Governor and later United States Senator Paul Simon from 1969 to 1972, followed by serving as legal counsel to the Illinois State Senate Judiciary Committee from 1972 to 1982. And whereas Senator Durbin showcased his dedication to Illinois' development in education while serving as an associate professor at Southern Illinois University School of Medicine from 1978 to 1983. And whereas Senator Durbin attended the Democratic National Convention as a delegate in 1984, 1988, 1992, and 1996, and he became chairman of the Illinois State Delegation in 1996. And whereas Senator Durbin won his election as a Democrat to the United States House of Representatives in November of 1982, and he began his public service representing Illinois' 20th Congressional District and the Springfield area on January 3rd, 1983, which continued for 6 consecutive terms before ending on January 2nd, 1997. And whereas Senator Durbin was elected as a Democrat to the United States Senate by a margin of 15 points on November 5th, 1996, and he proceeded to be reelected by at least 10 points in 2002, 2008, 2014, and 2020. He began serving as Senate Democratic Whip in 2005, and he has served on the Senate Committee on the Judiciary, the Senate Committee on Appropriations, and the Senate Committee on Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry. And whereas Senator Durbin's initiatives in the legislature include the DREAM Act, which gave way to increased diversification of the United States and an increased chance for undocumented immigrants to become American citizens in conjunction with President Barack Obama's Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program. And whereas in his tenure as leader in the Senate Committee on the Judiciary, Senator Durbin led the initiative to confirm Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson as the first Black woman to ever serve on the nation's highest court in April of 2022. And whereas during his time in the legislature, Senator Durbin has prioritized national health care, attending to it with an action as the author of legislation banning smoking on commercial airline flights, active participation in the development of the Affordable Care Act, and the securement of increased federal funding to combat childhood asthma, increased immunizations, expanded medical research, and federal funding to combating AIDS internationally. And whereas Senator Durbin has maintained a focus on the state of Illinois as his top priority and pride throughout his congressional career, as evidenced by his advocacy for Illinois' transportation infrastructure, including the expansion of Chicago O'Hare International Airport and the preservation and expansion of Amtrak, as well as the state's economic development, healthcare systems, and veteran care. And whereas Senator Durbin has given decades of himself, his time, and his talents, and is deserving of immense gratitude and honor for his prioritization of the people of Illinois and his commitment to the betterment of the United States of America. And whereas Senator Durbin will conclude his incumbency in the United States Senate on January 3rd, 2027, thus beginning his well-earned retirement. Therefore, be resolved that we congratulate United States Senator Richard J. Durbin on his retirement following an immensely successful political career, and we sincerely thank him for his service and dedication to the state of Illinois and to the United States of America. And be it further resolved that a suitable copy of this resolution be presented to Senator Durbin as an expression of our esteem and respect.
Leader Buckner is recognized for remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, Mr. Governor, our esteemed Supreme Court justices and members of the House and the Senate, today I rise in favor of H.R. 936 in honor of our senior United States Senator, Richard Joseph Durbin. Today we are not just passing a resolution and convening a joint session, we are welcoming home one of the most consequential public servants Illinois has ever produced. Senator Durbin's story is an Illinois story. He grew up in East St. Louis. He made Springfield his home. He practiced law here. He worked in state government. He taught. He built a family here. He built a career. And then he went to Washington and carried Illinois with him every single day. So when Senator Durbin comes before this General Assembly, he is not visiting strangers. He is coming back to the place that helped shape him. And what a life of service it has been. Think about the arc of history. This man has lived and helped lead. He interned for Paul Douglas in the 1960s. He worked for Paul Simon. He served with Carol Moseley Braun. He later helped guide and mentor Barack Obama. This is not just a resume. This is a bridge across generations of Illinois leadership. For 14 years in the U.S. House and nearly 3 decades in the U.S. Senate, Dick Durbin has been in the room where history was being made. But the thing I admire most is this. He has not survived in public life by becoming smaller, louder, or meaner. He's endured because he has a compass. He knows who he is fighting for. Dreamers, working families, farmers, students, veterans, immigrants, people in prison hoping for a second chance, communities that need an infrastructure, research, investment, and a voice at the table. And he's done it with a style that feels more and more rare every single day. Serious, decent, prepared, principled, and human. I spent 6 years on his staff, starting off as a 20-year-old intern in the U.S. Capitol, and later coming on full-time. And from him, I learned so much, I saw so much, and to him, I owe so much. When I worked for Senator Durbin around 2008, we were walking into one of those packed days where everybody important wanted 5 minutes of his time. Schedules were running behind, staff was stressed, the phones were buzzing. And if that wasn't enough, we were right in the middle of one of those seasons where it felt like the whole country was coming apart at the seams. We were still at war in Iraq and Afghanistan. At the same time, the economy was collapsing around people. The foreclosure crisis was devastating families across Illinois and across this country. People were losing homes they had spent their entire lives working for. Retirement accounts had been wiped out. Factories were laying people off. Small businesses were hanging on by a thread. And in Washington, every one of those crises landed at the doors of the United States Senate. And outside of that office, there was a woman standing there clutching a folder full of papers. She looked nervous, extremely overwhelmed. To most people, she probably looked like a delay. But Senator Durbin stopped. Not the political stop, not the shake a hand while still walking that we all do. He stopped and asked her what was wrong. She told him that she had been trying for months to get help for a Veteran Affairs issue, and she felt like no one saw her anymore. And I remember him looking at her and saying very simply, well, you're here now, so let's see what we can do. Then he turned to the staff and said, make sure that somebody stays with her until she has answers. And then he followed up personally to make sure that she was squared away. That stayed with me because powerful people are usually rewarded for moving fast. Public servants are supposed to know when to slow down. And Dick Durbin always understood that the people walking into those offices carrying folders in fear were not interruptions to the work. They were indeed the work. He has mentored and guided so many people in this space, folks like Sherry Bustos and Dan Seals and Tedney Duckworth and Senator Simmons and myself. When I left his office for a job to work for the mayor of New Orleans, he sent me an email that I've never forgotten and that I still often read. On March 21st of 2012, He wrote me, "If you choose public life, I will stand by you. But if you do, make certain that you are in touch with the people who really need you. There will always be wealthy and comfortable people who buzz around those with titles, filling their ears with empty praise and looking for a way to help themselves. Don't forget, the real measure of success in public life is honesty in the dollar sense and a dedication to helping those who cannot help themselves. Make a promise to yourself that you will never let anyone outwork you, whatever your goals may be." He was right. He also ended the email saying, "And don't stay in New Orleans too long. Those beignets at Cafe Du Monde are bad for your waistline." He was also right about that. Now, there's a lot of wisdom in those words, but what strikes me most today is this. He lives those words. In politics, people often confuse volume for strength. Senator Durbin reminds us that strength can be disciplined. It can be steady. It can show up every day for 60 years and still remember why it started. And today, we also honor the family behind that strength and that service. Loretta, Paul, Jennifer, the memory of Christine, and Joe, who is here with us today, and the rest of the grandchildren who carry a legacy larger than any title. For my generation, Senator Durbin has always been there, not as a statue, not as a slogan, but as a living example that you can be powerful without being cruel. You can be effective without being performative. And you can be principled without losing your sense of grace. That matters. So before history moves on to the next headline, this body should pause and say clearly, thank you, Senator Durbin. Thank you for carrying Illinois with honor. Thank you for showing what public service can still look like when it is done with purpose. Thank you.
With leave of the body, Senator Doris Turner is recognized for remarks.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to add my voice to those congratulating Senator Dick Durbin on today. Senator Dick Durbin has done yeoman's work representing the people of Illinois, and Illinois is certainly a better state because of him. 44 years. Think about that for a moment. 44 years of showing up for the people of Illinois. 44 years of fighting on the House and Senate floor, in committee rooms, and in communities like ours right here in Springfield. 44 years of choosing public service again and again, when he could have chosen something far easier. One project near and dear to my heart, and probably everyone in this chamber, because now you don't have to wait on the trains due to the railroad relocation and all of the new underpasses that you find around Springfield. The Springfield Rail Project. Something we began working on together back when I was on the Sangamon County Board. A project that followed me to the Springfield City Council and now to the Illinois State Senate. Senator Durbin understood the importance of the project and worked tirelessly to secure the funding to turn a community's dream into a reality, and we will forever continue to thank him. But it is much more than that. He has been someone that I have admired and looked up to for most of those 44 years. From his leadership skills to his kind words, even in the worst of times. He has been a champion for our state, and on a personal note, a safe shoulder for me in those good times, and certainly in the more challenging ones. His downstate values remind us of what representation is all about. It is about having conversations with everyone. It is about meeting people in the middle, and it is remembering how you got where you are today. The thing about Senator Durbin is he never forgot where he came from. He made the trip home from D.C. almost every weekend because his community and his family were and continue to be his priority. He kept his connections to the Springfield community, even though he rose to sit in the highest seats of power in Washington. He was always just a phone call away from anything I or his community needed him, and he always answered that call and came running. I think about what it means to serve this state. This is Lincoln's home. This is a city that has always understood that democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires people willing to put in the work year after year, even when the work is hard and the results are slow in coming. Senator Durbin understood that, he understands that, and he lives it every single day. He once said, "I know in my heart it's time to pass the torch." Those are the words of a man who gave everything he had and who cared enough about the mission to step aside so the next generation could carry it forward with fresh energy. I am proud to know him. I am proud to have partnered with him. I am proud to call him a mentor, but most importantly, I am proud to call him my friend. Congratulations, my friend, on a wonderful career. Thank you.
Leader Ma is recognized for remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, I join my colleagues in showering accolades on Senator Dick Durbin and recounting his enduring impact that he has had on our lives and on our state. While others have noted his storied history as a member of Congress and as our state's senior senator, securing funding and resources for Illinois on everything from infrastructure to health care to housing and environmental cleanup and more, I wanted to focus on something closer to home for me. The Illinois Women's Institute for Leadership Training Academy, or IWIL for short, began because Loretta Durbin recognized that our state lacked the kind of infrastructure to find, recruit, and support women candidates for state and local office. But IWIL, in its infancy, couldn't get off the ground without the critical backing and support secured by Senator Durbin. The funding that Senator Durbin was able to raise for this organization took the organization from a startup to a legitimate change-making force in Illinois government. I'm proud to be an alumna of this organization's training program. My journey to this chamber wouldn't have been possible without the work of IWIL, the support of Loretta Durbin, the amazing women who coached me all those years ago, and the hard work of Senator Durbin to get the funding and backing to transform this organization into what it is today. There's a lot to be said about Senator Durbin's work reshaping our state for the better. This achievement is no small footnote in that long list of accomplishments. Thank you, Senator Durbin, for all you've done for me and for our state.
With leave of the body, Senator Simmons is recognized for remarks.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, Mr. Speaker. Today we gather to celebrate a remarkable public servant, a proud Illinoisan, and a leader whose impact on our state and the nation will be felt for generations, Senator Dick Durbin. For more than 4 decades in public office, Durbin has been a steadfast advocate for working families, a champion for fairness and opportunity, and a voice of reason during some of the most difficult times in our nation's history. Like many people in this room, I can point to specific moments where Senator Durbin's leadership made a difference in Illinois. But for me, this occasion is deeply personal. Before I had the privilege of serving in the Illinois Senate, I worked in Senator Durbin's office as a legislative aide and as a young staff member. And so I had a front row seat to public service at its best. I had a front row seat to some of our nation's most important historical moments in my own lifetime. I was fresh out of college, and I went to Washington, D.C. to work on Capitol Hill, and Dick Durbin gave me my first real job. And I started off at the front desk answering phones, and we all know how that is. People call and complain and have problems, and as a 23-year-old, I was trusted with sitting at that front desk and handling the people all across this great state. And I really have fond memories of that time because, you know, Senator Durbin would sometimes come out and he would chat with me at the front desk. And it was so clear he knew who I was and he knew that what I was doing was critical to the overall operation. And later on, when I got promoted to legislative correspondent, it was 2008, 2009. The financial crisis was happening, and our country's economy was basically about to go down the toilet. We had the subprime mortgage crisis happening, and things were really painful for our constituents. And I remember Senator Durbin sitting with me and some of the young LCs one day, and there were a couple of letters that we couldn't understand. And sometimes people write, and they write in shorthand, and it's really easy in government to just set something like that aside and say, well, I don't understand that. That person didn't use a full sentence or whatever else. And the thing that the senator taught me at the time was, and several other young aides, is think about what they're actually trying to say. You know, if your life depended on you understanding that letter or that phone call, would you figure out how to address that person's issue? And that became a guiding principle for me, and it really simplified a lot of how I saw interacting with the public. And so my staff can tell you that this is one of the things that we've incorporated into my state Senate district office, and I want Senator Durbin to know that his example lives on for the next generation in the most important way. I would also say that when he was advocating for our state, you know, the senator was there during the time when our economy, as I said, almost imploded, when we had to come up with economic stimulus legislation. And I'm so proud at the time to be able to be a part of that, but also to watch him continue to shape our country's history long after I served as a staff person on Capitol Hill, well into my own career of public service. You know, he's the assistant, he's the majority whip in the United States Senate. You know, from Illinois, this is a name that we'll always talk about for generations in terms of those people who really made an outsized impact on our country and our world, the institution of the United States Senate. I remember Senator Durbin leading then, and I know that, you know, as we read our history and when we think about, you know, he worked for Senator Douglas and learned from Senator Douglas. Leader Buckner and I worked with Senator Durbin. We're now serving. Those lessons really are carrying forward in our state's history at a time when it's desperately needed. And so I'm so proud to be here today to reflect on Senator Durbin's legacy. Generations of Illinoisans have benefited from his leadership, and whether they realize it or not, his work has made our community stronger, our institutions stronger, and of course, our people better as a result. He demonstrates integrity and humility every day and dedication, even in his last days as our senior United States Senator. For many of us, his greatest legacy may be the examples that he leaves behind. The reminder that public service at its best is rooted in humility, compassion, and a commitment to making a difference for everyday people. Senator Durbin, thank you for your mentorship, for taking a bet on me and Leader Buckner when we were youngsters, for your leadership, and for your lifetime of service. Illinois, our state, your state, is stronger because of you, and generations of public servants, including me, are better because of your example. Congratulations and best wishes to you, Senator Durbin.
Leader Avalar is recognized for remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I rise to recognize the extraordinary impact that Senator Dick Durbin has had on the immigrant communities, not only here in Illinois, but across our country. Our leadership, his leadership, did not just shape policy, it shaped people. I know that personally. In 2006, an organizer from the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights came to St. Dominic's Church in Bolingbrook to invite young people to travel to Washington, D.C. to advocate for the DREAM Act. At the time, I was an undocumented college student, trying to think about what would my life be after I graduate without a pathway. So without hesitation, I joined a 15-hour ride to Washington, D.C., not fully understanding how profoundly that experience would shape the course of my life. That experience politicized me and introduced me to advocacy. And I returned from that trip with something that is so much bigger than just a trip to Washington, D.C. I came back with a sense of purpose. It was during that pivotal moment that I met Senator Durbin, and I actually have the picture to prove it. This was 20 years ago. That story is just one of many. Many of the young people who made that journey went on to become organizers, teachers, public servants, and leaders in their own communities, carrying with them the hope that one day the DREAM Act would become a reality. And nearly 20 years later, that hope still remains. Since 2001, year after year, Senator Durbin has introduced the DREAM Act, not because it was easy, not because it was guaranteed, but because he believed, as we do, that it is the right thing to do. His leadership created a policy window which undocumented people used to win DACA, a transformative policy that opened opportunities for hundreds of thousands of immigrants throughout our nation. Because of DACA, undocumented youth across the country were able to pursue higher education, build careers, support their families, and contribute meaningfully to our communities and economy. Something that felt like a dream became a reality. And today we see dreamers serving as teachers, doctors, nurses, engineers, first responders, business owners, and countless of other professions. But we know that so many are still under the shadows. Because while DACA changed lives, it is also a constant reminder that our work is not finished. We know that DACA is temporary, and currently it has endured a lot of threats by the current administration. But as we look to the future, immigrant communities continue to put their lives on the line for solutions that provide greater permanence, stability, and certainty towards a pathway that includes legalization and a pathway to citizenship. We know that legislating is difficult. I think we all know a thing or two about that. We know that progress often comes in steps, often not in the timeline that we need, but meaningful changes require persistence. And Senator Durbin, you have embodied that persistence. As you prepare to close this chapter in public service, know that we know and recognize that you led with hope, grace, and integrity. You created a precedent for visibility and opportunity for generations of immigrant families that we will surely continue building on and fighting for. Thank you, Senator Durbin, for using your platform every time you could to uplift the voice of directly impacted communities. Your work inspired many of us to find our voices, engage in public service, and continue advocating for a more inclusive future. Thank you.
Leader Hoffman is recognized for remarks.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House. Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Durbin is a product of East St. Louis and the Metro East, and he carries the values and have always carried the values of growing up in that area. Ones of hard work, honesty, caring for your neighbor, and making a difference. I can't believe when we were reading the resolution, how in the heck did we ever allow smoking on commercial airlines to begin with, right? And it seems like common sense now. But I remember when a senator led the fight to ban smoking on commercial airlines. It wasn't easy. And there were people who liked to smoke on commercial airlines, believe it or not. And it just showed that the senator would do the right thing even when it was hard, regardless of the political consequences. In 1996, when he ran for the United States Senate, he was nice enough to talk me into running for his seat at in the U.S. Congress, U.S. House. Well, I got to tell you, even though that didn't work out, losing one of the closest races in the country, what I learned working with Senator Durbin, not only on the campaign trail, working with and getting to know Loretta and Paul and his family and everybody in the Durbin orbit, what it means to be a statesman, what it means to work for something bigger than yourself, and what it means to have integrity in your job and honesty in your pursuits. That embodies everything that the senator has worked for in public life and in his private life. Let me just say that although it hurt to lose at that time, I wouldn't have got to meet all of you and serve in this body that I love. Wouldn't have got to meet Supreme Court Justice O'Brien, who I served with and love to serve with. To Loretta and his entire family, thank you for sharing, Senator, with us. Thank you, Senator, for everything you've done. When I travel and go anywhere in the United States and politics comes up, I am always proud to say that Senator Durbin is my senator, that he served us, and a true statesman. Congratulations on your retirement, Senator.
Members and guests, now, please stand and welcome for remarks the gentleman from East St. Louis, the senior United States Senator from Illinois, the Honorable Richard J. Durbin.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. Speaker Welch, Senate President Don Harmon, Leader Cam Buckner, Senator Simmons, all who spoke. Governor, I'm honored that you're here today. Thank you for attending this ceremony. And to all of you who've gathered, members of the Supreme Court, thank you very much as well for being here. I want to acknowledge the fact that it's a singular honor to speak before this General Assembly, and it's one I never expected. Loretta is sorry she can't be here, but I want to acknowledge my son Paul, our granddaughter Jo, and Tanya for coming here and joining us on behalf of our family. Thank you so much. In the gallery and on the floor are many staff and friends who've covered me in glory for many years. Longest serving, they include Kaylee Golson, I think started in high school working for me here in Springfield. A remarkable job she does downstate. Clarisol Duque, which is a name that's very familiar to many of you. She is the statewide director for our office, and she's in Chicago today, called me this morning with a legislative request. And I especially want to thank Pat Souters. Pat is from Quincy, Illinois, which he'll be quick to remind you if you don't know. Pat's done a remarkable job in Washington. Thank you so much for all that you've done for me. Missing today is Bill Houlihan, who's in Chicago recovering from a surgery. Our thoughts and prayers are with Bill and Cindy. My family story will certainly explain my values and my politics. Public service for me has been an opportunity to meet some of the most interesting and impressive people in our state and beyond. The story is simple. The Durbin side of the family arrived in this continent before we were a nation. They eventually found their way to Illinois and became prevalent in downstate Illinois. My father was born in Hamilton County, Dahlgren, Illinois. My family was raised in East St. Louis. My mother's story is quite different. At the age of 2, my mother was an immigrant to this country from Lithuania, brought here by her mother with her brother and sister. I can't imagine what it was like in 1911 when the SS Maine docked in Baltimore, Maryland, and this mother with 3 little children, one 2 years old, my mother 2 years old, set about trying to find their way to the land of opportunity, the city of East St. Louis, Illinois. Somehow or another, she found that train. She didn't speak English, none of them did, but they made it. And it was a remarkable journey. I was lucky enough to live to the point of returning to Lithuania, actually going back to the village where my mother was born, Jurbarkas in Lithuania, near the city of Kaunas. And as I was escorted into the town, I said, is there anything here today that was here in 1911 when my mother left? They pointed to the Catholic Church and said that's where she was baptized. And they said, the city and town well is in the middle of town and it's still there. So I went down to take a look and I tried to imagine what it was like when my mother's family, the Kutkaita family, called their family members and friends together to give them the news. They'd made the decision to come to the United States of America. It was a bold decision for a poor family in a rural area, but they made it. And I wondered when it was over after that meeting in the community to discuss what they were going to do next. I wondered if those who were at the meeting, as they went home from that gathering, said to one another, can you believe this? Can you believe they're leaving that perfectly good house? They're leaving their church. They're leaving their relatives. They're going to a place where they've never been, a place where they don't even speak the language. They'll be back, but they weren't. Like so many other families represented in this chamber today, they showed extraordinary courage and determination to make it work. They didn't bring great education. They certainly had no wealth whatsoever. But I think in their way, they made this a better country. There came a time 30 years ago when I was with my mother, and I said to her at her apartment, do you have your naturalization certificate? Oh, sure, she said, I know where that is. I'd never seen it before. She had become a naturalized citizen in the United States in 1935. And so I pulled out the certificate that had a photograph of her, and a little piece of paper flittered to the floor. I reached down and picked it up and I said, Mom, what's this? She said, that's the receipt for the filing fee. It showed that it cost $2.50 to be naturalized in 1935. And I said to her, why did you keep this? And she said, if the government ever challenges me, I can prove that I paid my filing fee. That was my mom. So if you visit my office in the Capitol building, 1 floor removed from the Senate chamber, on the credenza behind my desk is that naturalization certificate and the receipt. I put it there because I want everybody who comes into my office to realize I am proud to be the son of an immigrant. So the day came when we got a call to our office about 25 years ago. It was a young woman in the city of Chicago. Her name was Teresa Lee, 17 years old. A remarkable story. A Korean American born in Brazil who was brought to Chicago on a visitor's visa by her mother and father. Her father aspired to be a minister in a church and spent his whole time looking for a church that would have him. He would drag along his little daughter, Teresa, and she would get bored and look around the churches he was visiting. Almost always she found an old piano, and she sat down and started playing notes. Then she became a part of something called the Merit Music Program, Merit Music program in Chicago is remarkable. 3,000 public school kids each year are taught to play a musical instrument, and they are loaned an instrument for that purpose. Teresa Lee was one of them. She played the piano. She was quickly recognized as being extraordinary. And as a high school student, played with the Chicago Symphony. How about that? So they kept encouraging her, keep going to school, keep going to music school, go to the best, Juilliard, Manhattan Conservatory. She sat down to fill out the applications, and there was a question she didn't know the answer to: your citizenship, your nationality. She said to her mother, "What am I supposed to put here?" Her mother said, "I don't know. We brought you to this country at the age of 2. We never filed any papers. I don't know what to do next." A friend suggested the thing to do next was to call Senator Durbin. Well, she called, and lucky for me, the phone call was taken by Clarisol Duque. We quickly looked at the law, and the law was clear. This young girl had one option, and that was to leave the United States for 10 years and to apply to come back. When Clarisol told me that, I said, "That can't be true." She said, "That's the law, boss." And I said, "Then the law needs to change." And that's when we wrote and introduced the DREAM Act and said, if you're brought here as a child, your family made the decision, and you've gone to school, not committed any serious crime of any nature, you deserve a chance, a pathway to citizenship. That's the DREAM Act. I can recall the first year that I introduced it, Orrin Hatch was the Republican senator from Utah. He called me and he was angry. He's usually a mild-mannered guy, but he was upset with me. He said, "You stole my idea. The DREAM Act was my idea." And I said, "Well, since the Republicans were in the majority at the time, I told him you should be the lead sponsor. I'll just co-sponsor it with you. We'll do it together." So that's the way it started. Orrin Hatch and Dick Durbin as co-sponsors of the DREAM Act. 2 years later, Senator Hatch said, "I don't think I want to put my name on that bill anymore." 2 years after that, he was opposed to the bill. I kept working at it in so many different ways, trying to pass it. It finally reached a point where I thought, I've got to get this done because so many people are counting on this. And so I called a fellow who used to be a colleague of mine in the Senate and was a co-sponsor of the DREAM Act when he was there, by the name of Barack Obama. He had moved on to a new position in government, which was a good one. He was president of the United States. And I said, "Can you do anything by executive order to help the Dreamers?" And that's when he came up with DACA. DACA, at its best, was helping 900,000 young people in America, giving them the legal right to work without fear of deportation. It was a remarkable program. They had to renew the DACA status every 2 years, go through a criminal background check, pay a $600 fee, and they did it year after year. And then, of course, with the election of a certain president, it became impossible to register for DACA or re-register for DACA, more difficult this day. When I think about what I'm going to miss the most about retirement, it's the fact that at least during this period of time as senator, I've had a chance to help so many people. I don't know that I will ever find anything that has such a dramatic impact on individuals and their opportunities and rights. I'm still committed to the DREAM Act, and I hope that you'll join me in that commitment. It was a bipartisan measure, and it should be a bipartisan measure. These DACA people are serving America in so many ways as teachers and doctors and nurses and policemen and members of our military, you name it, they're doing all those jobs. They just want a chance to be part of America, and it's not too much to ask. Let me tell you another story. I'm going to try to wrap this up without going on too long. When I was growing up in East St. Louis, Illinois, my father got sick with lung cancer. He was 53 years old. He smoked 2 packs of cigarettes a day. I remember it so well because it was devastating to lose him and to watch him pass away in that hospital in East St. Louis. I decided I wasn't going to touch a cigarette because I knew what it did to my dad, but I didn't know what else was in store. When I was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives in 1983, elected in 82, served in 83, we had orientation. And I remember the whip of the House, Tom Foley from the state of Washington, spoke to the Democratic new members and basically said to them, one last point. We've got a lot of Southern Democrats. They're much more conservative than most of the party. We do our best to understand their economic situation. So please lay off of tobacco. Don't do anything that could anger the people who are growing tobacco. We need to keep these members in our ranks. Well, I listened to him and disagreed with him. I looked for opportunities. It wasn't easy. Big tobacco was the most powerful lobby on Capitol Hill. But there came a day when I was flying from Phoenix to Chicago, and I got to the gate late, and for any of you younger folks, you can't believe this could happen, but you came racing in with 20 minutes before the plane took off, buy a ticket, get a boarding pass, and make it to the gate in time. That was before TSA, and a lot of things happened. So I was at Phoenix, and I said to this lady, I need to catch that 9:30 plane. And she said, well, look. And she goes on the computer, and she comes back to me, and she says, I found you a seat. And I looked at it, and I said, this is a middle seat in the smoking section? She said, that's all we got. And I said, isn't there something you can do? And she said, no, but Congressman, there's something you can do. So I got in on the plane, sat in that center seat between two chain-smoking sumo wrestlers. I thought to myself, there's got to be a better way. So I went on to introduce banning smoking on airplanes. I didn't have a chance. I didn't have much of a chance. The leadership on both parties opposed me. But by several political quirks, I actually got my amendment to the floor to vote on it. And then I realized that I had the upper hand. This was the largest frequent flyer club in America. And they were sick and tired of smoke on airplanes. And they joined me, and we passed a ban on smoking on airplanes. And then started taking tobacco seriously in a lot of other ways. At the time, it's hard to believe, but at the time, 36 years ago, 27% of high school students smoked tobacco products, cigarettes. We went after them, the companies that were marketing to our kids. And as a result, we changed the marketing, and today that number is 2%, from 27 to 2%. But before I rest on my laurels, I will tell you that unfortunately, cigarettes have been replaced by vaping. Vaping is over 20% now in schools across America. And the decision of the administration 3 weeks ago to increase the number of fruit-flavored vaping devices is an invitation for more kids to start vaping. This is dangerous. I hope that you'll feel as I do and do something about it at the state level, but it's a challenge that we continue to face. So with that change in the law and the change in the aircraft, I think we made it more enjoyable to travel across the country. I've got a long list of things that I wanted to mention to you, but I'm not going to do it because I know you have an important work to do. But I do want to mention a couple of them very quickly. It was about 3 years ago that I went to Carbondale, and I met the new mayor of Carbondale, Carolyn Harvey. Carolyn is a great person. Some of you know her. She was on the Carbondale City Council when the mayor resigned, and she was elevated as temporary mayor. She is a retired employee of SIU Carbondale. So I went to her office, as I said, 2 or 3 years ago, and I said, okay, Mayor Harvey, you got a senator in front of you. What's your ask? Everybody's got an ask. What is it? She said 2 words, pediatric dentistry. I said, pediatric dentistry? She said, do you know what it takes for kids on Medicaid to get dental care? You can make an appointment for that kid's toothache and wait 4 months before he'll see a dentist. And then if they agree to do some work on that child, they have to wait a year or more to get that work done. A year with a toothache? Can you fashion that as a parent or grandparent? I can't imagine it. I told her, I said I'll try to help. Well, just a few weeks ago in Marion, Illinois, thanks to the efforts of the local folks, and I'm going to get the name of this organization correctly, the Illinois Healthcare Foundation. we opened a pediatric dental clinic in Marion. There's a fellow named Scott Beach. Scott, I've known since he was born here in Springfield. His dad was a volunteer in my campaign. He's now a dentist working on Medicaid patients. Do you know what percentage of dentists in the state of Illinois take a Medicaid patient? 14% will even take a patient. So we're going to open the clinic in Marion, and just several days ago, we got the authorization for a new clinic at OSF Hospital in Peoria. So we're doing our best, but I commend you to take a look at this. I know the governor and I have talked about it. It's a tough ask, and consider the fact that in Washington, we just decided to cut Medicaid by $1 trillion. $1 trillion, that's federal talk. $1 trillion over the next 5 years. So we're not making it any easier for you as members of the legislature to provide Medicaid assistance for whatever it may be. I do hope that you'll consider working on those things. Let me say just the last word or two. Of all the issues that come to you, one of the most interesting I faced is to stop one damn fish from getting in Lake Michigan. I can't tell you how many millions of dollars we have spent for poison, for electroshock, for disco bubble machines. We've tried everything, and we've done it. But there's a major project that's still pending. Governor, thank you for your leadership on Brandon Road. It's really been helpful. I want to close on a serious note here. The list of things which I've been involved in is very long, as you can tell. I do not deserve all the credit by any means. I helped, but any success was a team effort. Many of you were an important part of it. Each of us hopes to leave some sort of legacy from our time in office. Any legacy I leave will start with 3,000 office interns, including Mike Simmons, Cam Buckner, and many others. They have been given an opportunity to get their foot in the door. They liked what they saw. They made a life choice that'll be so much different than it might have been. Recognition has been given to Loretta's group, I Will, and the I Will Training Academy. I want to mention a name which is familiar to all of you now, should be. Barbara Flynn Curry was one of the early founders of that. Former Congresswoman Sherry Bustos, a graduate. In addition to that, our Lieutenant Governor, Juliana Stratton, is a graduate of the I Will program. Now let me get serious for a minute and tell you this. I want to close on a very serious issue. The oaths of office that you take and I take, we swear and declare our support for a document, the Constitution of the United States. One of the fundamentals of a constitutional democracy is the integrity of elections, that losers will accept results. Since John Adams succeeded President George Washington, we have accepted the finality of the election process throughout our 250-year history. Today we meet 5 months before a national election. Debates in Congress and contests in our courts indicate this next election may be challenged in ways we have never seen before in our history. Abraham Lincoln, in a House divided speech that he gave here in Springfield, gave a grim warning that the divisions in America over the issue of slavery could destroy our nation. We see similar divisions today. The challenge we face in the days ahead could be just as serious. I hope that those of us blessed to live in this land of Lincoln will remember his warnings in 1858 and his counsel to those who lead this nation in our time. In closing, my life has been genuinely enriched by helping people from our great state and nation. I hope that yours will be as well. Thank you.
Well done, Senator. Members, Senator Durbin has agreed to take photos in the well. I would ask if you would allow the governor and the constitutional officers and the Supreme Court justices to go first, but he will take photos